And in just a few last moments, the King has expressed his, quote, heartfelt thanks to the emergency services in phone calls with the Prime Minister and police chiefs, praising their efforts to, quote, restore peace and sharing how he had been greatly encouraged by the many examples of community spirit that had countered the aggression and criminality. Joining me now to get stuck into this in the studio is former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider, broadcaster and TV personality Precious Muir, and communications officer at the IEA, Reem Ibrahim. Panel, good evening.
Hello,
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, yeah, not bad. A bit tired. I've been up since 4 a.m. Second show of the day.
It was a Friday night, you did drink.
Quick word on the King first. So he's spoken out about the riots of the past couple of weeks. He previously asked for an update from the government to what was going on. What do you make of his intervention, Reem?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting just from the riots and on that perspective. I think that you're absolutely right with everything you said in the monologue, specifically about the hypocrisy. There are figures like Sadiq Khan that are effectively there saying that, you know, they have taxpayer-funded security. They are obviously protected and rightfully so. However, there are millions of people across London that have felt unsafe over the last few years, and ultimately this is a result of Sadiq Khan's own failures.
James, you were, if I may say so, scowling slightly when I was reading that monologue.
Yeah, I don't mean to get off on a bad start, but I found the monologue, to be honest, churlish and dishonest. I mean, Sadiq Khan...
Which part?
Well, quite a lot of it. I'll itemise if you want. I've got at least 3 points.
Go on then.
I think that Sadiq Khan is allowed to say that he feels fear, firstly because there are terrorist threats and plots against him. Secondly, if you have experienced racism in your childhood, as he did, seeing the scenes as we all saw on our devices of mosques under attack, buildings set on fire, roadblocks set up, people being dragged out of their cars, it's understandable that someone would say that their memories of racism would be triggered off by seeing that happening. On the point about Jews feeling unsafe, speaking as part of that small minority and one of these whatever you call it, rampaging pro-Palestinian, rabid pro-Palestinian protesters. It simply isn't true that the hundreds of thousands of people who week after week after week have been opposing our government's complicity in the crimes that are taking place against the Palestinian people are in any way a threat to Jewish people. And there's one final point, just one last point, which I think is particularly churlish and dishonest. He said that, reading from your own script, he said that being prepared for a terrorism attack, not wanting one to happen, not one happening, being prepared for one. I want the mayor to be prepared for a terrorism attack. I want the Met to be prepared for a terrorism attack. I want our whole government to be prepared. I don't think saying that we are prepared and being prepared is part of being in government, which it really should be.
He was rightly slammed for that comment. The terrorist attacks from native Islamist Brits should not be happening in this country.
Of course.
And you said then the fact that hundreds of thousands of pro-Palestine protesters who have taken to the streets in London aren't all anti-Semites. Of course. And that's in the same way that the thousands of people protesting this week and
last... No, it's not.
Sorry?
No, it's not.
Let me finish my point. In the same way that thousands of people who took to the streets this week voicing concerns about migration aren't all far-right thugs. There are, yes, a few knuckleheads.
Yeah. So let's look at the output of those two things. The output of week after week after week, hundreds of thousands of people protesting against our government's...
Do you accept some Jews felt unsafe during this protest?
I'm not going to deny how people would subjectively feel, of course.
That's what I'm talking about.
No, how people would subjectively feel, of course. But let's look at the output of those two different types of protest. One of them is violent attacks and racist violent attacks on people up and down the country, and the other one are large demands on our government to no longer sell arms to Israel and be complicit in the crimes which are being committed against the Palestinians. The arrests that are made on...
How is the UK government complicit in Israeli genocidal crimes? How is that the case at all?
Because of selling arms to Israel, which is in breach of international law, which is in breach of our own laws, as the legal judgment will show, following, for example, the International Criminal Justice's case on...
I think we're kind of like I know what you're saying and you're making your points, but we're kind of getting off track here. Sadiq Khan is a mayor. He's a mayor of London. And as a person of colour, I want to be able to look to the mayor of London and be able to know that he's putting my thoughts and values and my safety ahead of anything, right? Because I feel like I'm voting for you. If I'm voting for you, you need to obviously look out for me. And I feel the knife crime right now is horrific. It's horrendous out there. And being re-elected, I have no idea why he was, because he hadn't got a handle on it from before. So now being re-elected, he's not actually he's doing the same things he'd done before still today.
So I think
nothing has changed.
So I think what you just said is completely legitimate point to make, and I wouldn't say was churlish or dishonest, because you're not taking...
just me then that's being churlish and dishonest.
So far, we've all got time. We could all get in on the game, but that's a legitimate criticism.
That's my focus. As a person who's born and raised in London, grew up in London, and I've seen the differences. Knife crime is horrific.
And James, that's my only point. I'm not saying Sadiq Khan shouldn't feel unsafe, because he should after the scenes of this week. And I'm not saying that his children shouldn't feel unsafe. I'm simply saying, welcome to the club, Sadiq. Londoners have felt this for many years. Jews have felt this for the past year or so. And now you're feeling it.
And it's also his fault. I mean, let's be honest here. He has been mayor of London for quite a long time now.
Such a long time.
It is his fault. And ultimately, actually, a lot of those kind of crimes, I believe that he is complicit in allowing those things to occur. And at the same time, they're not allowing the government to then work on it.
Well, he's not getting control of the situation. He's not getting control. It's the issue of not handling it.
And
I think that he kind of just looks over this situation and think it's going to kind of sort itself out. It's not.
But also the fact that the Metropolitan Police themselves, I think, have such a large scope of what they're allowed to do. The fact that they end up spending a lot more time arresting people for tweeting or putting out a comment on X, rather than actually sort of looking at those specific crimes themselves. And I think what's interesting about that is the Mayor of London himself can say that he himself feels unsafe. But actually, if you're thinking about it from a wider perspective, he's only himself to blame.
I just don't know why you need to go and do a Guardian interview, a big bombshell interview saying, I feel unsafe, the far right have made me feel like, I'm unsafe in my own city. Mate, you have a full-time 24-hour security team of Metropolitan Police officers on by your side day in, day out. Ordinary Londoners don't have that.
Ordinary Londoners don't have that, but also, to be fair, we don't have plots against our life. At least I hope that we aren't having plots against our life that regularly happen. Yes,
there are plots against Brits every day.
There are specific plots against Sadiq Khan, which there aren't specific plots against us. And we know, like Donald Trump, there was an assassination attempt. He was that close from being killed. And that is someone who has lots of security. So I think that it's not weird for someone who faces a large amount of death threats to say, I'm frightened about that.
I agree, he needs it. My only point being is he has this security team. Jews don't have security with them, the police by their side all the time. Londoners don't have it all the time. I'm just making the point. Yes, he deserves it. Yes, there are threats against his life, but he has 24-hour security. Other people don't. Do you accept, James, just briefly on these pro-Palestine marches, that some Jewish people feel unsafe as a result of these marches and some of the behaviour going on in them?
Of course, I would not say that someone's subjective experience is wrong. That's the experience they're having. What I would say is that when from the top of our media and our politics, people are saying London is a no-go zone, that these are hate marches, that there are hundreds of thousands of jihadists marching in the streets, and all sorts of absolute nonsense. What those people are doing is frightening Jewish people.
I mean, some of it is hateful.
I was to say, my mum was on the marches, the pro-Palestine marches, and my family are Muslim, and from that perspective, they do believe more fervently than I do that actually the cause and the pro-Palestinian cause is one worth fighting for. However, it is absolutely abundantly clear that there are many, many Jewish people in London that felt absolutely unsafe walking the streets of London, in the same way that many Muslims at the moment feel incredibly unsafe as a result of the far-right protests. Now, I think we've got to make the point here. It is perfectly reasonable to say, I believe that actually immigration is too high in this country.
Agreed.
There are ways
100%.
to do that. But we can condemn the protests. We can condemn setting mosques on fire. We can condemn those people. And at the same time say, actually having the perspective that there is too much immigration in this country is a perfectly reasonable perspective.
It's a reasonable
Reem, that sounds a bit too sensible.
We've got to have some nuance.
Are we dealing with sensible politics these days? James, you put it quite aptly yourself. The hundreds of thousands of people who go on these pro-Palestine marches aren't all rabid anti-Semites. And again, I say, just as the thousands of people who attended protests this week, you did get some knuckleheads. You did get some knuckleheads who are racist and targeted mosques, and they've rightly been banged up. But they're not all far right.
They're not all racist, exactly. I think that we're losing the sight of the actual message, OK? There are people out there stealing stuff from Greg's Bakery and stealing Crocs, but they are not the masses, right? We are also concerned. As a UK citizen, I am concerned of mass immigration, right? Mass immigration and migration and all of this stuff that we should be concerned about. We're not concerned of the following stuff that's happening because of the rioting and the damage to property and all of this stuff, but they're separate groups. And as a woman of colour, I can say that I am not a racist. If you want to jump in here, but I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that there are two groups. There are obviously people are taking advantage of the circumstances and using these riots and these protests to cause problem and chaos. Yeah. But there are also people that are really, truly concerned about the mass migration that we have in this country. We simply cannot manage and function as a country to have this many people coming in. We just can't. And every UK citizen should be concerned. Not because if you're white, not because if you're mixed, not because if you're black. We as a country, as UK citizens, we should all be concerned about that situation.
Precious Muir bringing the dose of common sense on Friday night. James,
the reason why they're in no way comparable is 10 days ago, how this started. It didn't start that there was a set of protests against the levels of migration, which some people in it then went and attacked the mosque. It started totally the other way around. It started with a far-right racist attacks on mosques and then other far-right racist attacks around the country. It's not a protest movement that's got out of control. It started as a racist attack on people.